She's one of the highest profile athletes in sports today. One of the biggest stars in the world of tennis. Maria Sharapova has held the title of world #1 on 5 separate occasions. And according to Forbes, she's also the highest paid female athlete on the planet. A child prodigy with a remarkable story. It was her Wimbledon victory over Serena Williams at the age of 17 that put her on the map. Her runway looks didn't hurt either, appearing on the cover of Sports Illustrated and landing lucrative endorsement deals in sport and fashion.
Former #1 player in the world and maybe soon to be again, Maria Sharapova.
Today, at just 25, she has nearly 30 singles titles to her name. And after her win at Roland Garros this year, she would complete a career Grand Slam, becoming one of few women to win all 4 major tennis championships. This week, Talk Asia catches the tennis superstar in Tokyo.
Hi, Maria. Alex.
Very nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you.
She shares her advice for young players, plus her plans for life after tennis, whenever that might happen.
Want me to retire? That's not happening.
Coming up on Talk Asia.
Maria Sharapova, welcome to Talk Asia.
Thank you.
You've racked up quite a number of victories, but your first WTA victory actually came here in Tokyo.
It did.
And then you repeated the following year. Do those first victories here in Japan, do they still hold a special place for you?
Oh, absolutely. I think when you're growing up and your wish is to win titles, and you get that first big one, no matter how old or young you are, it's such an incredible memory.
Let's talk about your personal story, because it's pretty remarkable. Your family was living north of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster,
right,
and your family fled, and you were born several months later. I mean, obviously you were a newborn, but talking with your parents, and what do they remember about that time?
Yeah, it was a very strange time, and also in their lives as well, because both of my parents were from Belarus, and that's where my mom was pregnant with me, and then Chernobyl hit, and you know they looked at other options, and they left to Russia, to Siberia, where my mother's father was working there, and that was kind of the path towards my life. That's where I was born. 2 years later, we moved to the southern part of Russia, a little warmer, in Sochi, and that's where I started playing tennis at the age of 4.
And that story is pretty interesting as to how you got started in playing tennis. Maybe explain a little bit. Your father became friends with
Yevgeny's father,
Yevgeny
right.
Kafelnikov's father, and Yevgeny being one of the most famous Russian tennis players.
Yeah, well, looking back at those years, tennis was not very big in our country at all. Not many facilities, so the conditions were very difficult, and Yevgeny Kafelnikov, who was a big star in our country at the time, especially when tennis wasn't so big, really brought tennis on the map for us. That was our first big star there, and he happened to be from the town where we were living, and my father had become friends with his father, and Yevgeny passed on my first racket to me, which we had to cut. We had to cut the grip because it was too long. It was probably longer than I was at the age of 4, and that's how I started.
And then, we'll just skip forward just a few years, you were apparently spotted at a tennis camp in Moscow by Martina Navratilova, who's pretty much the best women's tennis player of all time. So that must have been a bit of a boost for a 6-year-old.
Well, that was such a, it was really luck, because there happened to be this exhibition in Moscow, which is a 2-hour flight from Sochi, so it was kind of a chance that my parents even decided to go there at the time. I flew there with my father, and I was part of, I would say, 200 kids that attended this clinic, and it was one of those where you just hit a couple balls with Martina, and then you run around the court, and then you pick up those balls, and then you get back in line, and who knows if you're going to hit another 2 balls. So it was a very unique opportunity, because after hitting that one rally with her, she came up to my father and said that this girl has a lot of talent, and you should really do something about it. And at the time, tennis was just not big enough. There's just not enough to really build tennis players. So that's when we made that decision to move to the United States.
some pretty important ground strokes, I guess, hitting with Martina at the time.
I don't know what I did.
Good thing you didn't hit it into the net, right?
Maybe they were in the net. I don't know.
But she saw something, and so then you and your father took what little you had and then headed to one of the most famed tennis academies in Florida, the Bollettieri Academy in Florida.
Well, we knew where we wanted to go, but nobody knew we were coming. It was one of those things where we bought a ticket to Miami. It was like the Moscow-Miami flight. We landed there, and it's another 3 or 4 hour drive, you know, up north to Bradenton, Florida. And we just knocked on their door. It was like evening time, and we said, you know, we want to go in, and we
literally just went up and knocked on the door.
Just went to the front desk there and said, how do we sign up to be part of the academy? And they're like, well, it's a little late now. It's like everyone's eating their dinner already, is getting ready for bed. Like, come back tomorrow. So we went in a motel, came back in the morning. They put me in this group with, you know, 10 kids on a court, and the coach, you know, one of the coaches on court, I don't know, number 32, he saw me play for like 30 minutes, and then he called over Nick Bollettieri, who was, you know, practicing with other kids on center court, and said, you know, you got to see this girl. And then a little bit after that, I got a scholarship at the academy, and then I got signed up by IMG.
So obviously a lot of people believed in you, and you could maybe tell that you were on your way to a successful tennis career. And then at 17 in 2004, you beat Serena Williams to win Wimbledon. Did you think that success would come that early?
Oh, never. Not success at that type of level. I mean, I think what people forget is I started that tournament on court number 16 in the back with a lot less people than on stadium court at Wimbledon. That's really how I like to look at things, is, you know, people like to talk about where your success came from and how it all started, and people always refer back to that Wimbledon victory. But you got to roll back the tape and rewind to the moments where you found yourself in the back courts where you're losing matches, and then hours later you see yourself back on the practice court working on the things that, you know, that got you to lose that match. That's what ultimately drives you to the point of victory on center court at Wimbledon.
Coming up, we find out why this year has been one of Sharapova's best yet.
I was like, this is pretty special. I might have to rethink about my next answers about what's my sweetest moment, because this is really, really special.